At the Constellation Fund, our sole focus is on effectively fighting poverty in the Twin Cities. Every dollar from our growing community of generous donors goes to impactful nonprofits. Because we believe smart philanthropy is kind philanthropy, we go to great lengths to use the best available evidence in our funding decisions. But evidence comes in many forms, so how can we be confident in the evidence that we use? Let's take a moment to explore the world of evidence and how our team navigates it. At Constellation, we draw from numerous sources of quantitative information to conduct our metric-driven evaluations. This includes local demographic information, as well as program data from the nonprofits themselves. When using evidence, we work to understand not just the outputs of an organization, such as how many people were served, but also, importantly, the outcomes that those outputs produce. How did the lives of those individuals change for the better? This means identifying reliable information that can tell us how much better off a participant is as a direct result of a certain program. Ideally, this evidence would be high-quality, long-term outcome data from the nonprofit. But this type of data is hard to come by, which is something that we at Constellation are working to change. In the meantime, we turn to carefully selected evaluations and studies that can help us reasonably estimate those outcomes. Not every existing evaluation or study makes the cut. We consider nuances in the quality of the evidence. Do the underlying studies employ rigorous methods? How well do the programs and the research match the program we're evaluating? Is there a clear and direct causal link from the program to the outcomes? We prioritize evidence with strong research design, especially those using randomized or quasi-experimental methods. In a randomized controlled trial, participants are randomly split into two groups, with one group receiving some programming while the other group doesn't. Sometimes moral or practical concerns prevent researchers from fully randomizing participation. This is where quasi-experimental studies come in. They use other means to try to ensure that the only difference between groups is program participation. In all cases, our impact team takes care to select the most rigorous study designs and works hard to find studies that closely match the programs we are evaluating. At that point, we often average the findings from many studies in order to incorporate the most likely outcome into our analysis. By now, you might be asking yourself, why does this matter? As long as we're using evidence, we're doing our best, right? Good question, so let's dig deeper. Imagine that we've completed our analysis for 4 programs operating in each of Constellation's main impact areas: education, employment, health, and housing. By this point, we've built and applied all of our relevant metrics to create benefit-cost ratios for each of these programs. These ratios allow us to compare the expected poverty-fighting impact of each organization's activities for every dollar spent. And here they are. It appears that all of these organizations are creating a meaningful impact in our community. But to fully understand these findings, we must first understand the types of evidence driving each of our analyses. Let's say that the best available evidence about the impact of the education program came from a well-crafted quasi-experimental study. The program being studied is similar to the one we're evaluating, but there are some key differences that need to be taken into consideration. Perhaps the age range of the participants in the study does not map neatly onto the ages of the young people served by this program. For the employment program, let's say that our evidence comes from a randomized controlled trial on the actual job training program being implemented by this nonprofit. That is ideal. For the health organization, our evidence came from averaging the outcomes of several different studies on numerous similar initiatives, which we call a meta-analysis. The programs studied are a good match to our program. However, our program actually provides a handful of additional services, which very likely have some additional benefit that we need to consider. And lastly, for the housing intervention, say we had to piece together a few different sources of evidence to find a direct link between the program being evaluated and its projected impact. In the absence of clearer causal evidence, we had to make some assumptions that have the potential to be inflating the projected impact. We make careful note of these differences in the quality and applicability of the available evidence. This is what we call strength of evidence. Deeply understanding the evidence means that we have done the best we can to understand not only the significant poverty-fighting potential of these programs, but also the subtleties of and limitations to the evidence available to assess that potential. It also means that to make a truly informed decision, there are additional pieces of context to consider. Qualitative aspects of our evaluation, community dynamics, and evidence we weren't able to use in metric creation, all in an effort to understand how quirks in the available evidence might influence our understanding in one direction or another. Going back to the 4 programs in our example, Each evaluation has its strengths and weaknesses. While the employment program has the lowest projected impact of the group, a 3-to-1 return on investment is still a significant impact, and our confidence in the evidence behind that impact is very high. Conversely, the strength of evidence is lowest for the housing program, but with a remarkable 8-to-1 benefit-cost ratio, it might represent an investment worth making. Depending on the results of our qualitative analysis, Constellation may decide to fund each of these 4 organizations, which collectively project to turn every dollar invested into over $5 of lifetime health and income improvements for those experiencing poverty in our community. Our team would then update each evaluation annually, taking great care to incorporate any new evidence that could further our understanding of the programs and their outcomes into our metrics. All of these intentional steps, the gathering and contextualizing of evidence, the consideration of the quantitative and the qualitative, the continual search for new and better insights, will have played a valuable part of what we at Constellation consider to be evidence-driven philanthropy. We've all seen those movies where a clever scientist makes a singular breakthrough that solves the problem and saves the day. Unfortunately, work like ours will never be that simple. There are no shortcuts and few easy answers. The good news is there is an abundance of information available to inform our giving, with countless committed professionals leading a wide range of poverty-fighting efforts and brilliant data scientists and researchers uncovering new evidence about what works best. In fact, there's so much information available that none of us is capable of remembering it all, let alone applying it effectively to philanthropic decisions. That's why Constellation employs modern analytics to create tailor-made analyses that integrate this growing wealth of evidence into our decision-making process. We believe that harnessing the best of this information is critical to the progress we all seek. We also believe that this diverse array of information needs to be understood in its appropriate context and used with humility and care to make the best decisions to meet our mission of effectively fighting poverty in the Twin Cities. And here at Constellation, that's what we're all about.